In this video, we're going to discuss using percent tables. When working with percentages, it might be useful to set up a percent table. And this would be a method that would help you organize your work. In the following example, we're going to calculate 16% of $35 using a percent table. So I'm going to walk you through an example of how this might work. 100% of $35 would be itself. 100% is simply 1, so 1 times $35 is itself. Next, we're going to use 10% of $35. All we did, again, was move the decimal to the left one place. Because we know 10%, well, half of that would be 5%. So half of $3.50 would be $1.75. You can think about $3, half of $3 is $1.50, and half of 50 cents is an additional quarter, and that is how I got $1.75. Because I have 5%, if we want to get to 16%, I notice I have 10 and 5, I need 1%. Because I can simply move the decimal one more place to the left for the second row to get 35 cents, and that is equivalent to 1%. I now have 10, 5, and 1, which added together would give me 16%. So by adding these three values for 10%, 5%, and 1%, and we'll go through that, $3 plus another dollar would give us $4. When I add the change here, I see I have $1.25 plus an additional 35 cents, and that is in total going to give me $5.60. This is a way to use a percent table to jot down some of those percentages and then add up the totals. Now, by no means is this the one and only one way to do this particular problem when you work with these. You might think about it differently one day from the next, but this would be an example of how to use a percent table. Now again, of course you could use a calculator, and some phones have apps now for calculating tip, but I encourage you to practice these by pen and paper, because that practice will help strengthen your skills and confidence when calculating percentages such as this. For each of the following values, I want you to find 10%, 15%, and 20%. I'm going to walk through these. If you'd like to pause the video and work these yourself, I encourage you to do so. For the first value, for 45 here, we're going to use percent tables. Because 45 would be 100%, when I take 10% of 45, I would simply move the decimal one place to the left. So 10% of 45 is 4.5. 5%, because you already have 10%, you can take half of that. So 5% would be $2.25. And I say that in terms of money because I find that often helps students. If you think about, instead of these as just random numbers, think of $4.50. Half of that would be $2.25. For 15%, you are going to add the two lines above. So $4.50 plus $2.25 gives us a total of $6.75. For 20%, just simply double the first line, and that gives us $9. For the second row, move the decimal to the left one place in order to get 10%. 10% of 52 is 5.2. 5% will be half of that, so I'll have $2.60. 15%, I can add the two rows, and I'll have 7.8. For 20%, simply just double the first row to get 10.4. For the last number here, 112, moving the decimal left one place gives us 10%, 11.2. Half of that will be 5%, which is 5.6. 15%, I add the two rows to get 16.8. And 20% would be 22.4. Encourage you to practice these outside in the real world to strengthen your confidence and skills when finding percentages.